Hello, I'm going to talk to you about storytelling because that's what journalism is all about, putting words and pictures together to make a report or a film interesting and to engage an audience. So how do you make it interesting? How do you keep somebody watching? Well, how about if I asked you to tell me the most interesting fact about yourself in a single sentence? Could you do it? Well, unfortunately, we're not interactive, so I can't hear what your replies might be. But how about if I tell you one of my own? I almost died scuba diving. Well, how do you react to that? Hopefully you want to know more. What happened? How did it happen? And that's the so what factor. That's how you engage an audience and hopefully keep them. And you're only doing that by making a story interesting. Now, doing storytelling is really about a process, a discipline. 80% of it is probably logistics, 20% is creativity. So it's a process that you follow, and maybe it's like making a sandwich, is that you have the top slice of bread, which is your opener and your grabber, maybe your single sentence, which sets up what the film's going to be about. In the middle, you have your content, which is your meat and pickles or cheese and tomato, which is really literally the meat of your sandwich or your story that develops and you engage and keep the audience involved. And then there's the end slice, the back slice, and put together with the closer. Hopefully, if you made something which is interesting and dynamic and does what you want. Is it a call to action? Is it asking people to donate? Is it just informing because it's a news report? Whatever it is, if you follow a process, you have every chance of making it interesting and keeping your audience. So what is a report made up of? Let's have a look at this clip from a Channel 4 news piece. And what I want you to do is to look at what the film or report is made of. What are the different elements in it? Write down what you think the story is composed of, and then check it against what I'm going to tell you I think is involved. Okay, let's take a look now.
Of course, many people question the value of taking children out of school for something like this.
You know, I think Greta Thunberg is a 2-time Nobel Prize nominee. She's spoken at the UN, and I think that for any child, getting an opportunity to hear her speak is going to be invaluable education.
Thank you, and let's march!
And march they did. Police estimated more than 15,000 joined in. Organisers claimed it was more like 30,000. They scrambled for a view of the star attraction, her audience finding any vantage point they could.
This is monumental, I think. I think seeing this massive crowd of people coming together, I think it's amazing.
What do you think she's doing that you like?
Trying to save the planet!
But not everyone in Bristol today was impressed.
They can protest on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook. They don't need to block the road, block the whole city centre.
We're Channel 4 News.
Load of bloody rubbish. Just load of bloody rubbish.
Why do you say that?
Well, because you're not going to get nothing out of it. You won't get a thing out of it.
Having Greta Thunberg lead your climate strike rally is obviously a huge coup for the organisers here. And it comes just a day after, of course, another very big moment for environmental campaigners.
So what did you write down? Hopefully some of the following: that there was a voiceover or a commentary, there was a sound bite, there were vox pops, there was the use of mobile footage, different types of shots, different locations, and a piece to camera. So if you hadn't planned and hadn't gone through the process of thinking what you needed for your film, what would your result have been? Probably not an interview setup, maybe not the right pictures. You might not have been in the right location if you hadn't worked out where the geography and where you needed to set up your camera and the shots you could take. Maybe it wasn't possible to do a piece to camera because it was a live demonstration going on. So storytelling is about this process, about getting things right. And if you find the best locations, the people to interview, if you set up everything beforehand and realize if you can do it, then you will get it right and it will work. And that's what we're really trying to do all the time. So it's not just simply going out like there at a demonstration, live demonstration, and shooting whatever you see blindly without thinking about what you're going to script, what you need to cover, and coming back and seeing, can you edit it? It's actually knowing beforehand. So, finding your story. Where do you find your stories? Well, if you're looking for a specific sector, of course, it's much easier if you're working in a business team, on sport, entertainment, science, education. Then, of course, the stories are very obvious in terms of you will be monitoring them anyway. You know your subject matter. Otherwise, where do you look for one? Well, it's pretty obvious online, talking to people, newspapers, press releases, word of mouth, and following your nose. Some of the best stories come from those very small little news in brief bits in a newspaper. And that's my experience. Is one of my biggest documentaries I ever made was a 4-line piece in The Guardian about people on the test island of Mururoa for French nuclear testing, is that they were being flown secretly to Paris to look after their cancers that they'd got. And I don't know why, but I followed it up, and 18 months later I'd filmed it secretly in Paris, people arriving. I'd been out to Tahiti to film with Greenpeace and followed back the families and the cases of abnormal children being born. And that was all the result of 4 lines in a little nibs, a news in brief piece. And it won awards and was a very satisfactory thing to do. So keep your eyes open for things that might interest you. Tear out pieces of paper, write things down, store things in some way. And hopefully you will come up with a kind of report that you want to do. Remember the so what factor. Well, that's what you have to ask yourself, these questions, when you're choosing a story. So I call them the W questions. Why is it so important? Why is it happening now? Why do you feel that it's worthwhile? Why does it matter? And why should people be interested or concerned? Of course, it doesn't end there. Once you've found your story, you have to ask yourself even more questions. What kind of story is it? Is it a new story? Is it a twist on an old story, which is a different element, a different angle that you can bring to it? Is it a running story, which is like coronavirus and needs constantly updating, and you've got something else to add to it, a new person to interview or a new element? Is it investigative? All sorts of different types of stories, and that you need to know what sort of story you're producing to help with your focus and with your research, of course. And remember, the laws of research are never assume anything, question everything, because that's your role as a journalist, and check everything, not once but twice, especially anything that you find on the internet or on Wikipedia or on BuzzFeed or wherever you're looking for your research. And what's the reason for that is your story has to be watertight, because otherwise you or the company you're working for can be sued and you can get yourself into trouble. There are lots of legal and ethical issues and guidelines that you have to think about, and hopefully you will be told about when you film or before you film. How you film people, have you got the consent, and the language that you use, the questions or the responses that you get. So you have to be aware of so many other things. And of course, once you've got to this stage, you might have decided your story yourself, but you might still have to pitch it at a news conference or to a news editor in order to get it commissioned, in order to be able to go out and actually film it. So pitching is an art in itself. And remember the single sentence that I talked about, being able to say the most interesting fact about yourself. Well, you have to have the top line and what the film is about in one sentence when you try and sell it. You also have to know the peg, so the reason and a date and why it has to go out at a certain time, or why at all, the different elements, the fact that you can do it in the time needed, so if it's a day turnaround or for the end of the week, and that you have checked the resources and that it is possible. Of course, it doesn't end there, because once you've got your story accepted or you've decided on it, you've still got more research to do. You've got to call people who are going to interview. You've got to set up interview times. You've got to check their details. And you've got to ask them perhaps for suggestions of other people you might talk to. You've got to check out your locations. And you have to see if you get permissions you can't go and film in a shopping centre or in a royal park or on a railway station without permission. And you've got to make absolutely sure that you can get to all these places within the allotted time. So there's still lots more to do, and part of this process of storytelling and your research is that you keep developing, you keep finding new things, you keep following people's suggestions, so that what comes out in the end is the best of all worlds. You get to make the best film, which is really what you want to do. And then, of course, the fun starts, because before you go out, you not only have an idea in your head, but you should actually have in your hand a rough script, a draft script. And that script really is down to one thing, which is mathematics. There are 3 words per second in the spoken word. So when you're writing down your script, you have to time it. So if you look at this draft script on the slide, you'll see that everything is timed. And that gives you a good idea of how much you actually have to film. In fact, you have to film a lot more in terms of pictures. And if you want maybe 2 vox pops, you'll have to do 5 or 6 to get any good ones. The same with interview sound bites. The same with trying with your piece to camera, how many times you have to do that. So you'll have to shoot more than you think you need. But it's about a 8-to-1, 10-to-1 ratio of what actually goes into your report. And then once you've got that script, of course, it's what you work to when you go out and film, and literally tick it off to make sure that you're getting everything when you're out there in the field. When you look at this slide, it makes you realize that words and pictures go together. So without having any words or caption, do you know what this picture says? Is it about the consumption of beer, the price of beer going up, a new budget with a hike on alcoholism prices? So remember that when you're writing your script, that's how the words and pictures go together. So going back to your rough script, the easiest way to set one up is to do a text box on your computer and then just fill it in with your 3 columns. So you've got your commentary, your pictures, and your timing. And whether you use or put the words or the pictures first is really up to you and how your brain works. Some people think very visually first, so you can immediately think of your opening shot. Other people think of the opening sentence and then add the picture. So whichever way works for you, do it that way and start assembling and writing your story, and of course timing it. That's the most important thing. And then really you're almost all set. You just have to check everything again, not only your equipment and what you're taking out, but also that you've got all the elements that you need, you're organized for. So maybe you're going to meet interviewees or out there, or maybe you're going to record them on your mobile or your camera, in which case you have to organize for when that's being done, and you have to have written out and thought about the questions, because of course you don't want just a yes or no answer from them. You want a proper soundbite that you can use, and you have a rough idea of what you think they're going to say and what you want them to say. And also with your piece to camera, always write it out beforehand. Don't try and busk it and just stand there, because the words won't come and you will have had to time them as well. So all about logistics. Have you got the time to do it? Have you mapped out your journey, how you're getting from A to B? Are you going by car? Are you going by public transport? Will it all work? And then just go out there and have fun, and hopefully you'll come out with a very good film at the end, which you'll bring back, and the editing starts, which of course is a totally new process, which I'm not going to talk to you about right now. So very good to have spoken to you, and enjoy your time as a video journalist or mobile journalist. It's a wonderful creative process, and you'll get better at it as you go on and as you repeat it. So enjoy.